So again, I'm going to be using my little calculator, right? I don't have my TI, but we've done these problems before. But again, the S tells us that we're in radian mode, so make sure your calculator's in radians. And then I'm also talking about the interval from 0 to pi over 2. So essentially, we're stuck in quad number 1 at the moment. And so how do I find the arc length that makes the sine equal to this? Well, we invoke the inverse sine function. And so that's 0.12345 and on here, right? This would be S is the inverse cosine of 0.98765, and this would be S is the inverse tangent, all right, of 0.8. One thing that is a little new, all right, and I can't remember if it's in this section or not. I know it's a little later, but recall that S is actually a arc length. And so when I'm actually invoking the inverse cosine and inverse sine, we actually call them arc sine, right, or arc cosine, or the arc tangent. But when you see that, that's another giveaway. When you see arc tangent or arc cosine or arc sine, that's another giveaway that we're talking about a radian, and we're basically measuring the arc length on the edge of a circle, not so much the angle. Although, as we know, right, the angle and the arc length are the same when r is equal to 1. So it all ties together. So please be aware of that. Again, when we're invoking sine inverse, that could be radians or degrees. But when I'm talking arc sine or arc cosine or arc tangent, that basically forces the issue. We're in radian mode. But either way, it's just the inverse function. So going to my little calculator, right, for me, I'm going to have to do an inverse. Oops, I better clear this out. Right, so clear that out. We're talking the inverse, so the inverse sine of 0.123456. And hit enter. It looks like it's 0.1238. So 0.1238 is our answer. The cosine value, again, I'll invoke cosine, and we have of 0.98765. Hit enter, and that roughly looks like it's 0.1573. The inverse tangent of 0.8, right, looks like that is 0.6747. Okay, so again, we're strictly in radian mode, so make sure you have that. What about the other three? Well, cosecant, right, that's not on my calculator, so I first have to rewrite this, right? If cosecant is that, we know that the sine of S is 1 over the cosecant of S. So this tells us the sine of S is 1 over 1.25, which means that S is the arc sine. I'm going to go ahead and use that new notation of 1 divided by 1.25. Same thing here. This we know that the cosine of S is 1 over the secant of S. So this tells us that the cosine of S is 1 divided by 2.12, 3, 4, and 5. So S, in this case, would be the arc cosine, or the inverse sine, or cosine of that number. And cotangent, well, we know that the tangent of S is 1 over the cotangent. So in this case, the tangent of S is 1 over 1.5. And so that means that S would be the arc tangent, or the inverse tangent, of 1 divided by 1.5. All right, oops, I forgot my 1 divided there. So now we can move to the calculator, right, and we can basically calculate all these things out. Let me bring that up a little higher. All right, and so the first one, we're basically talking about the inverse sine, or the arc sine, and we have 1 divided by 1.25. And I better close those parentheses off just to make sure. And it looks like we get 0.9273. The next one, we're talking the arc cosine. So the arc cosine, and we've got 1 divided by 2.12345. And I will close my parentheses off, hit equals, and it looks like it's 1.0804. And then last but not least, the tangent. S is roughly equal to the inverse tangent or arctangent of 1 divided by 1.5. I'll close those parentheses, hit equals, and it looks like 0.05880. So again, stuff that we've done before in degree mode. What's different is just we're doing it in radian mode right now, and we're actually finding, this is what's kind of weird about it, we're finding on a unit circle, right, how much arc length was created, or in essence, right, since theta, there's S and theta are the same. And so it's very, very similar problem that we did before, and we're invoking our, the new thing might be the sine inverse is now arc sine. The cosine inverse is arc cosine, and the inverse tangent is now arc tangent, because we are talking about arc lengths. So we've got one more thing we need to redo in radian mode, but I will obviously do that in another video because this one's getting a little lengthy. So see you guys in one more video shot.